A lot of y'all are struggling with my influencing isn't a real job as classist for many reasons, but one that is prevalent among American audiences in particular is not being able to distinguish holding an individual accountable and making sweeping generalizations and understanding the system within it. So I want to add some points of clarification with citations and some added nuance to this discussion. And I'll start with saying, I only heard about the OpenAI brand trip, which was one of the scandals I mentioned here. I've also made a video last week about the Jules LeBron situation. I only heard about that brand trip because other people messaged me about it. I had only heard of one of those people before, and I had already blocked them because I didn't like their content and I thought it was harmful. And instead of hate watching or bullying, I don't give it my attention because that is how the attention economy works. And it would still be doing what is actually happening now of just promoting these narratives. That is what I have observed. That is what I understand of the algorithms after being on here for 2 years. That is how I keep the line between accountability and where I lose the plot. Because I agree with a lot of what people are upset about, with capitalism, with being over-advertised to, with consumerism, with all of these issues. I understand. And as soon as you start getting transphobic and personally attacking people, you undermine that part of the argument, which is unfortunate because it's a valid argument. And this happens in real life too. I remember being a kid arguing with my brother and my dad saying, hey, make this about the issue. You're overgeneralizing when you make it about everything they've ever done or start saying things like, well, you're just a terrible person and nobody likes you. I always remember that moment. That made a profound impact on me as a child of, oh, yeah, I shouldn't be doing that. I should keep the focus on the behavior. So now let's go into more of why, as a class researcher, I am concerned not when I hear people say this person's content is harmful, though I would still advise you to stop making them famous. But why am I now we're getting into class concerns? Because occupational stigma is real, and it has always impacted who does certain jobs, what the pay is, and if it is seen as a real job. This applies to part of why people treat hospitality workers as shit because they see them as beneath them and not doing a real job. And part of why these industries have very high turnover in service work because people are told it's not a real job. This impacts both the workers who leave quickly and the companies who have very high turnover. It also is part of why these places have constant chaos because, and for people who lack leadership skills, that is how they manage, pitting people against each other. And that is why I am stressing this point, is because we are at a point in time where the class concerns about AI are very obvious, very palpable. Is that the word I'm looking for? It's very in our faces. It is a playbook of the elite to then pit the working class against each other. I know being an influencer is not the same as being perceived as doing what has been called dirty work, which is service and hospitality work. But this has not only been used to dismiss these jobs. It is even why a lot of universities in the US, at least, use adjunct faculty who, when you count up the time that a person puts into a course, grading, student interactions, developing the course, teaching it, it is less than minimum wage. And these are people with most likely Ph.D s, but also some with masters. It was not designed to be something that is a real job. This in teaching has a long history with, as soon as women got into it, it was seen as something that could be paid less because it's something you do just on the side once the kids are grown because your man has the real job. It is also something that has always been done to critique creative work. While looking up some of the sources for this video, I ran into this art exhibit about artists talking about how they are not perceived as having a real job. No, it is just a hobby. All of these are very different types of labor, and I understand y'all are like, yes, but this is like marketing, sales, etc. I am very supportive of you blocking people who are scammy, grifty, etc. I worry about some of y'all's judgment with the things I get tagged in of other people's career advice. And I'm like, they're scamming you. Who is this person? What are their credentials? Why are you listening to them? This is something you should always be thinking with advertising. You should be aware when you buy a car that you are probably not going to be in this kind of landscape going on like rough and ready and you're suddenly a badass. Marketing is built to sell you a fantasy of a story that you want to be in. It's probably good self-awareness to know what kind of stories you are attracted to. I'm not sure why so many perfume ads are in the desert, but I know if I buy perfume, which I don't think I ever have because so many people just gift that to women, that I just have random things people give me at Christmas or whatever. I'm aware aware that I'm not going to be in a desert fantasy. I kind of miss what the story is here, but it's very common. It always surprises me when I see yet another desert perfume commercial. Y'all marketing experts know what this is. I would be interested in hearing about it more in the comments because it is very funny to me. I'm encouraging you to increase your brand literacy, your marketing literacy, reducing your consumption in general. I'm pro blocking these people. I understand it's different than dirty work, which is what I was talking about as well, of why I'm concerned about what is considered real work that gets into a weird area. But I'll be honest with you, I don't think most of these people are actually rich who are influencers. Some of them are, but a lot of it is this. A lot of it is marketing. I wrote in my book, and yes, this could be considered marketing. But the reason I included non-binary people in my research sample, even though they're only 2%, was because they're about 1% of the population, and that is the same percent of the population that has 50% of the world's wealth. Not a nation's, the world's. So just statistically speaking, that is why I have a hard time believing all of these people are rich. So while I know they do not have the stigma of dirty work, I just have a hard time getting into that class language of what is real work or not. Block them. Don't buy from them. Be skeptical. Remember to be upset at the systems behind them. Are you really mad at a brand trip? Are you mad at OpenAI? Are you mad at AI in general? Are you worried about the jobs that are being lost and then seeing this? All are fair. But we get to that generalizing when we just start attacking people for especially their identity. That rage has always been used. We see it throughout history to take away more labor rights. To say, hey, this isn't a real job, we don't have to pay you. Jobs that usually aren't considered real jobs are low wage, creative work, which is also being attacked right now with AI, being copied and tried to regurgitate it for free. Jobs that are not traditionally 9 to 5 and controlled by someone else. So this is again why it feels classist to me, is if only people who are not allowed to be in someone else's controlled work environment, to do the 9 to 5, to have the clocking in for the man, but the man, the owner, are they doing a real job? This is why it gets into classist tones. And I know a lot of y'all are saying, AI can replace CEOs, I know it's just like an anger. You just are undermining yourself and your labor when you use this language, because this language is used to justify taking away rights. Everything that happened with Doge a couple years ago, I don't think y'all understand. And I made videos at the beginning of that with Doge. I was like, what's happened to federal workers is going to impact private sector. As soon as you start saying you don't deserve those benefits, so take them away. Now nobody has benefits. You never, ever, ever get labor rights by taking someone else's away. Criticize people who are grifting. Block them. Don't bring them in your life. But as soon as you start saying what is real or not work, you think that won't be used to then lay off an entire marketing department? You think that won't be used if you're on a sales team? It's just in an era where this is often targeted towards creatives or really low-wage workers. Again, who's being replaced? Customer service reps, artists, graphic designers. I'm not saying don't critique influencers. I am telling you, critique what the problem is. Never, ever, ever undermine the value of labor. That is exactly what the people who don't want to pay for labor want. And if you've read my book, and if you've been on my page, you know that people from low-income backgrounds, especially who are women, struggle to self-promote and talk about their strengths. And that is part of what is holding them back. An entire system behind it. And it is also the socialized behavior. What I hear when you tell people don't get a real job is you're angry, rightly so. You maybe don't have the emotional intelligence to know how to not overgeneralize, which when you're pulled in all sorts of places and maybe struggling yourself is also fair. Also tells me you might struggle with the mindset of that if you aren't working for someone else and abiding by their rules and receiving their external validation, you might have lower self-esteem yourself and undermine that you don't have a real job. And if you have that in you, which is programmed in working class kids, you are likely struggling to make the moves you need to move up the ladder if that is what you desire. The risk takers, the people who want the financial freedom, who want to do really interesting work or whatever, have to learn how to tune out the crabs in the bucket saying it's not a real job.